Everyone, I'm so excited. I am here with Marin Lepore. She is a filmmaker and activist. Marin, thank you so much for joining me today.
Thank you so much for having me. I'm excited about this.
I'm so excited. So, I have so much I want to talk to you about. But first and foremost, let's just start from the beginning and tell us about your childhood, because that in itself is a whole adventure and brought you to who you are today.
Yeah, absolutely. So I was born in China in a province called Jiangxi, and I don't know anything about my birth parents, but I ended up in an orphanage as a baby. And then when I was 10 months old, I was adopted by my parents who are white Americans. So moved to the States, grew up with them in Colorado. I have three other sisters who are also all adopted from China. We're adopted from like different provinces in China though. So we're all really close in age. So we kind of just like grew up together in Colorado, which was super cool. My dad, he travels a lot for his job and he had the opportunity to move to a different country. So us as a family, we were like, oh my God, we should use this opportunity to move to China maybe, because my parents are super open-minded about the whole like adoption thing and culture. So they were like, oh, we should move to China and then you guys can learn more about your language and your culture and stuff like that. So when I was like 10 years old, my whole family, we moved to Beijing and we lived there for like 6 years. So I went to like a Chinese middle school there and like an international high school. And I'm like fluent in Mandarin now because of that. And
Oh,
then,
wow.
yeah. And then halfway through high school, we moved back to the States. And so I finished high school in Colorado. I started college. I went to a film school, transferred out of that film school. And now I'm at a different film school finishing my degree. But yeah, I graduate in like a year and that's where I am kind of.
Oh my God, that's amazing. Wow. You were adopted when you were 10 months old. Does that mean that you came to the US when you were 10 months old? Because I just know the process of adoption can take a long time, that sometimes babies or children can be adopted at a certain age, but they don't end up in the other, like in their home until they're older.
Yeah, so 10 months old is when like I met my parents and they like took me back to the States and I started living here. So the adoption process for them probably started like a year before that.
Gotcha. And you said you have three other sisters. Are you the oldest or youngest out of them?
Yeah, so I have one older sister and two younger sisters, and we're all 2 years apart. So my older sister's 23, I'm 21, and then my younger sisters are 19 and 17.
Oh, were you the first to be adopted?
No, we were adopted in that order. All of us were adopted around like 10 months, 1 year-ish. So it was the same for everyone.
Oh, wow. And so your parents went to China and picked you up and brought you home?
Yeah, that's how it.
Oh, wow. That's amazing. So how was it growing up in the United States in Colorado and then moving to China?
It was good. It was interesting. So my my mom, she's like super against the American education system because there's a lot of issues with it and like the standardized way of teaching. So we all grew up homeschooled. We grew up going to like little homeschooling groups and we grew up going to like Chinese adoption camps and stuff like that. So we were very involved in the like cultural heritage aspects of our lives even as kids. So making that transition wasn't like a completely foreign thing. I would say the biggest surprise for me was, well, when I moved there, I was only 10 years old. So when you're young, I feel like transitions are somewhat easier because you're just like
Mm-hmm.
going with the flow. But so we grew up in Arvada, Colorado, which is like some little suburban town. It's very white. And so, and so moving to Beijing was interesting because it was the first time I was like racially invisible. Like everyone around me looked like me, and it's like people didn't ask me where I was from because it's just like normalized. Like everyone there is Chinese, everyone is Asian, and so it was funny when we went out a bunch because our parents are white, right? So we would go out shopping with them, and they would be like, "Oh, who is this?" We'd be like, "Oh, it's our mom," and then people would be like confused about that, like, "Oh." You'd be like, oh, well, is your dad Chinese then? And we're like, no, we're adopted. And it was like it was like this thing. And then also our parents didn't speak Mandarin, so we would always have to speak for them. So people would assume we were like their translators sometimes, even though we were like teenagers. And like
Oh my gosh.
it was also funny because when we went out shopping, so our parents obviously look like foreigners. So people always assumed they were tourists. So whenever we bought something, we would have to separate. We're like, we cannot have this white person with us, otherwise they will try to rip us off.
Uh-huh.
Like, my Mandarin is really good, so when I speak, I don't have an accent. So people just assume I'm like a Chinese native, but I cannot read and write that well.
Oh, okay.
So when I would go to restaurants, people would assume I was just like some Chinese native, but I would still like point to pictures on the menu because I can't read it, and they'd be like, what is wrong with this kid? And we'd have to like explain that we were like American and Chinese wasn't our first language, but it was really fun. I think another big difference was not through the culture, but just like moving from a small suburban neighborhood, like we live in a cul-de-sac, to moving into like a huge city. I've never been in a city before. Beijing has 20 million people.
Wow, yeah.
It's like super densely populated. It's like a huge city, and we lived in like the capital like business area, but it was cool. It was just like so much going on all the time. Everything was really diverse. Kind of reminded me of like New York City.
Yeah, absolutely. And I've actually been to China. I studied abroad there for almost a month in 2014. And it was just the biggest culture shock for me because that was my first time being abroad, really, besides Canada. And it was, like you said, just so densely populated. And it did. I was in Hong Kong for a little while, but we were mostly in Shenzhen. And Hong Kong reminded me of Times Square so much.
Yeah, it's so fun. It's like you're just taking cabs everywhere because you don't really have your own car, and it's like taking subway. And
I don't know how it was for your parents being white, but our group was diverse. So there were mostly white people. There were only 13 of us, and there were a few people of color. Somebody was Mexican. There were 2 girls that were Black, and 2 girls had red hair. And we were in a few provinces where there were no white people. It wasn't like a tourist area like Beijing or Hong Kong or anything. But we went to some areas where there were just no tourists at all. And everybody was asking to take pictures with us. They were coming up like touching our hair, especially the 2 girls with red hair. Everybody was touching them all the time. It was really funny. It was like a cool experience.
oh my gosh, yeah, that's crazy.
Yeah, it was really, really funny. People were, I don't know about it much, but I guess there's some sort of, it's like it's good luck to have white people touch your baby or something. I don't know, because everybody was handing us their babies, their crying babies. They would hand them to us. We had Chinese buddies, basically. So people who studied abroad from China to our university. When we went there, they guided us around. So it's kind of this like program that our schools shared to have buddies to help with the language barrier and everything. So our Chinese buddies, they called themselves, told us that it was something like that. I don't know. Yeah, they were like crying babies, and people would just be like handing them to us and asking us to take pictures with their babies. It was a really cool experience.
That's so funny.
Yeah, it was really interesting. It was cool. And we had that experience too. Like none of us could read or write. We took a Mandarin class. I didn't pick much up. I picked up a few keywords like thank you, please, things like that. But yeah, if the menu didn't have pictures on it, we would have to leave because we didn't know. We would just point to pictures. So you were there 6 years. So you moved back when you were 16?
I moved back, and then I started junior year of high school.
And was that a public school then that or you did homeschooling?
Yeah, it was a public school, and this was the first American public school I've ever been to in my life. And transferring in the middle of high school isn't fun to begin with, but then when you're transferring and you're saying you're moving from a different country, people assume you're like a foreign exchange student. And like that's fair, that's valid. Like I was moving from China, I look Chinese, and I speak Chinese, so like that's like you're not being rude or anything. Like it's a fair, it's a fair assumption. But everyone thought I was like a foreign exchange student. And I was like, oh no, I'm like from here. I'm from Colorado. We just like moved back.
Oh my gosh, that's so funny. It must be just confusing and kind of, I would imagine, frustrating to you to have to explain it to every person you meet.
Yeah, it was okay though. I don't know. American high schools are kind of a wild time. It wasn't as bad for me though, because I was part of like an IB program, so it was very like small. IB is kind of like AP. It's just like a different like school program with like higher tests and stuff like that.
Gotcha.
But yeah, the IB program at the school I went to, which was Fairview High School in Boulder, it was like a super small group, so it wasn't as hard of a transition from like going from like a small international Beijing school to like a public school.
Gotcha. Gotcha. And do you have plans to visit China again, or have you been back since?
I actually went back for the first time since we moved back last summer. My older sister, she does a lot of volunteer work. So she was working with this organization called Hope, which is where they use horseback riding as a form of physical and emotional therapy for disabled children or children with special needs. And so I went out there for the summer. It was in Beijing, and we helped them. I just volunteered. I took photos, helped play with kids and stuff like that. But we also just used the summer as like a big nostalgia flashback to revisit all of our favorite places, our favorite restaurants. It was really weird going back after we had been back in Colorado for like 5 years since we moved back. And so when we went back to Beijing, it was like it wasn't like super different, but like technology had like become a huge thing. Like you can't just wave down a cab anymore. Everything is like ordered on your phone. And then like going to shops and stuff, you like pay on your phone. Like everything's very like, I don't know, it was interesting. And then a lot of the places we used to go have been like shut down and rebuilt into like better things. And
Oh, wow. So they're trying to update.
yeah, everything was updated.
Wow. I feel that way too. When I went to Iceland, everything was just technological. Like when we went to Blue Lagoon, we had these like technology bracelets that open things. I was like, what is this techie world? Like the Jetsons. It was strange. And do you feel connected to your Chinese culture since you were adopted into a white family?
Yeah, I feel very connected to it. I feel like I'm really fortunate in that I was brought into a family that was super open-minded. Our parents, since we were babies, have tried to connect us to our culture through like the Chinese heritage camps and like the adoption groups and stuff like that. Obviously, like the experience of living in Beijing was amazing. In high school, once I moved back, I tried to like disassociate myself from it a bit just because of all of like the racial stereotypes and stuff. But since being in college and stuff now, I've just embraced it.
That is lucky. I feel like, my boyfriend and I were planning to adopt and we're planning to foster. And we went through all this training and stuff. And something that they talked about is that the risk is that if a white family does adopt a child or, a baby or a teenager, they're at risk of losing their culture. And it's so important to keep them connected to that culture any way they can. So that's really great that your parents were able to do that.
Yeah, I'm so grateful that they've been consistently open-minded about everything, give us like as many opportunities to connect with Chinese stuff as we can. It's really cool.
That's awesome. And I know you said you know nothing about your birth family. Is that something you're curious about at all?
Yeah, absolutely. For a while, as I was growing up, I wasn't sure, but now that I'm like in my 20s and I've been thinking about it, I was like, yeah, I feel like I want to know. I actually just watched a really good documentary. It's on Amazon Prime. It's called One Child Nation. And it basically talks about how the reason so many Chinese kids have been adopted is because throughout the 90s and stuff, China had the one child policy. And so obviously, especially if they're families who like live in small communities and stuff, they need boys to like work and pass on the family name and stuff like that. So a lot of girls are set up for adoption. I don't know, it was like a really interesting documentary because it basically explores how kids who are put up for adoption, like there's so many different circumstances that lead to it. It's not necessarily that your parents didn't want you, or maybe they just like couldn't. You like don't know what the situation is. And I feel like it would be cool to go back and explore that. Yeah, I would love to go back to my birth province or my birth town and just kind of like see what it's like, maybe look for my birth parents. I feel like that would be really cool.
And are your parents supportive of that? Do they know that you want to do that?
Yeah, they are. We've been talking about it a bit. We're like actually planning eventually to have a trip back to China, and we're gonna like road trip to like all the different provinces that me and my sisters are from. That's really cool. A couple years ago we got one of those DNA test boxes for Christmas where you like cube and then they like send you your like heritage and stuff. I haven't gotten a chance to do it yet, but I'm gonna do that soon.
Oh my gosh, yeah, that'll be really interesting. I'm friends with a woman who was adopted when she was a baby, and she's 61, I want to say now, and she did one of those DNA tests a few years ago, only like 2-3 years ago, and she found a bunch of her family members through it, her biological family. She found out that she had siblings and like cousins, and an aunt came up on it or something. So interesting. And she had looked for her biological family like years prior and couldn't find them, and was only able to find some twins through that DNA test. So it was really cool for her to meet some of her bio family.
Yeah, that would be amazing. I would love to see what happens with that.
Yeah, wow, that's crazy. Well, that's really nice that your family's so supportive of that. And I love that idea of driving around to all the different provinces. Wow, that's going to be quite a journey.
Yeah, China has like a really good train system now too that we realized when we went back last summer. So we might just train to all the different provinces.
Wow. And I know you're a filmmaker. Do you have any plans to film that journey at all?
Yeah, I would love to. I was actually thinking about maybe making it into a documentary. That's in like the very early stages of planning, but we'll see what
That would
happens.
be incredible. Yeah, for sure. So, yeah, I wanted to talk to you because you are a filmmaker and you have a web series. I put the Buy and Bitter, which is about Alex and Sam. They're best friends. One is lesbian, one is bisexual, and they're in high school. And so I wanted to talk to you about that because I know you're passionate about being inclusive and you're an activist and you are a part of the LGBT community. So I wanted to talk to you about when you knew you were gay, if you came out, where's the idea for this web series come from? So can you tell me a little bit about that?
Yeah, absolutely. So I realized I was gay probably midway through high school. I mean, I probably realized like way before that, but I never really thought about it because, you know, you're a kid. That's not like the most pressing thing on your mind. And also, I wasn't actively out dating or anything. So I wasn't really thinking about relationships or attraction. And I was also like a big nerd in high school. So I was very like school focused and all of that stuff. But I realized because, you know, being on the internet and being exposed to like different views and open communities. I had like a Tumblr account and stuff, and then that kind of like opened my mind to like how diverse the community is. I was like, I relate to this a lot, and then you know, just through like just like self research and self reflection, you kind of put the pieces together yourself. And also, I had like dated guys before, and it never felt right, and I didn't really know why. So it was kind of just like a light bulb moment. I was like, oh, that's why it was like uncomfortable. So yeah, and so I didn't ever come out officially to my family. Yeah, I didn't ever come out officially to my family. One, because I didn't think it was like a huge deal. And then two, I wasn't in a relationship or anything. So I didn't really think it was relevant at the time. My family is like super, like I said, they're super open minded, super liberal. And so I knew it wouldn't be like a bad thing if I did come out. So I'm super fortunate that I have an accepting family like that. And so I guess I came out just like casually. I don't know. I like don't even remember a specific moment, but I started getting into activism throughout high school and early college. And so I went to like Pride one year with my friends. So that was like a big hint. And then, you know, obviously I came out with my web series. I went to like a Haley Kiyoko concert. I don't know. There were like a lot of things that like I didn't really need to say it and I just kind of knew. It was actually funny because one time I wanted to test it out. So I did like officially come out to my sister. I like told her, I was like, hey, by the way, blah, blah, blah. And then she immediately responded. She was like, yeah, dude, I know. We've all known for so long. And I was like,
Oh,
okay. I'm like, okay, well, that was pointless and I'm not going to do that again. I was like, cool, great.
oh, wow.
It was great. Yeah, the whole thing has just been like really casual and really, it hasn't been a huge deal, which is amazing. Yeah, as for the web series, that was kind of, I feel like growing up, what would have made self-acceptance and coming out and all of that stuff much easier is if we had more representation on screen. You know, a lot of the gay movies and gay TV shows that exist right now, they're either R-rated, dramatic, tragic, or sexual. You know, they're for like adult audiences. We don't have a lot of LGBT content that's accessible to kids. My idea for the web series was, hey, what if we had a comedy that was like lighthearted about teenagers, about gay teenagers in high school, where their sexuality isn't some big coming out story and it's just kind of like accepted and it's like they're just living their lives. Like it's a show about them being teenagers and growing up rather than a show about them being gay, you know? So I just wanted to normalize being gay, especially while being young, and just desexualize the entire experience in like a funny way that was accessible to kids and younger people.
Yeah, and I really loved that. So I watched season 1 and 2. It's so good. I love that you just have about 10 episodes. They're each like 3, 4 minutes long. and it's super impactful, and it really has so much positive feedback. Like, I was reading the comments, you have like over 2,000, 3,000 views on a lot of them, and just a ton of comments, and people are really invested in these characters. And something I did notice is that the main like love story between Sam, who is bisexual, and then Naomi, is that they really don't kiss until the end of season 2, which I really liked, that it was like not a physical thing. They were really connected on this emotional level, romantically involved. And I really like that, because so I watched this show, I don't know if you've seen it, Riverdale, and a lot of the characters, it's a teen show, and a lot of the characters are gay or lesbian, but it's so sexualized. It's super sexualized. So I really liked that I put the Bi and Bitter, it wasn't about all that sexualization, and the characters are half naked, like mounting each other, you know? So I really liked that it was just this real, genuine, intimate, emotional connection. It's really sweet, but it's so funny too. It makes me laugh so much. It's really so impressive.
Thank you so much. That means so much to me. Yeah, the whole point of the series was really just having media out there that kids can watch and kids can relate to without feeling the need to like sexualize themselves, because like sexuality isn't inherently sexual, you know? And that's one of the big issues we see right now in society, is that gay kids are like extremely sexualized. Like if a little boy has a crush on a little girl, it's like cute and stuff, but if a young girl likes a girl, people are constantly questioning like, well, how do you know you like girls? How do you know if you haven't like had sex with a woman? And it's like all of these things, and those things build up if you grow up with like that internalized homophobia, internalized heteronormativity. And so that's just something we wanted to explore in the series. And what I'm really proud of in the series is that a lot of the people, both in cast and crew, are part of the LGBT community. The producer, Kelly Zanconi, she's amazing. She produced all 3 seasons, and she also co-wrote season 2 with me, but she's also a lesbian. And so it's coming from, like, it's by gay people, for gay people. And I think it's that authenticity that people are relating to, because we haven't really seen representation that wasn't based on like filtered through stereotypes of what people think gay people are. And so a lot of the jokes aren't meant to be alienating to straight people at all, but there's like a certain aspect of it that a lot of gay people can like relate to, because they know it's like for them specifically.
Absolutely. And you could really feel that through the comments on each video. People really are resonating and connecting. And people, I love that they'll put quotes from the series, and they're like, oh my gosh, this line killed me. Oh, I've heard that before. You know, it really resonated a lot. So because you have overwhelming support, do you think you're filling a gap within the film industry?
Yeah, absolutely. I think the comments and stuff, we weren't sure like how the series would be received, especially when we were making season 1. But once we uploaded those first few episodes and like people connected to it so much, it was just so validating as a filmmaker to know that you're like reaching these people and you're reaching the audience you wanted to reach. We really just wanted to like spread positivity and spread love. And since like making the series, we've had countless people reach out to us saying that we help them come out to their families, or they use the series to come out to their families. And I'm just like, that is so amazing. And like the fact that we helped one single kid, like that makes everything worth it.
It's amazing. And I loved the scene where Sam does kind of officially come out to her mom. Cause, you know, one of the friends was like, huh, have you thought about this? And the mom was like, what are you talking about? And so Sam officially comes out to her mom. And that scene was so sweet. And it really like made me cry. It was just so heartwarming. And, you know, it's really unfortunate that some kids in the LGBT community don't have that experience with their families, that they're accepted. And so I really liked that. It was really sweet.
Thank you so much. That was one thing I really wanted to do with this series, was just to have positive representation, because we've seen so many films where coming out scenes don't go well. And I'm like, but we as people, I feel like we learn by watching stuff. So if we're constantly watching, this is how a coming out scene should go, this is how gay relationships should be celebrated, I feel like that'll push the needle a bit in a better direction.
I agree. I absolutely agree. And so is this series done? Is it done at 3?
Yeah, so we ended after season 3 due to actually production issues. A lot of the cast moved away, a lot of the crew moved away, and also obviously there's like the financial resources. So we did wrap up the story at season 3 though. Like we knew season 3 was the end, so we were able to give it an ending. We're thinking about using the series as a proof of concept and potentially writing and pitching it as a 22-minute TV show. Like that's what I would love to see. So we'll see where that goes. But yeah, the web
Amazing.
series is over now.
Okay, I'm definitely gonna watch season 3. I loved it, and it's in festivals now, right?
Yeah, we already did a festival run for season 1 and season 2. Yeah, we played at Klexicon, which was amazing. It's like one of the biggest LGBT women's film festivals in the country.
Wow.
And
Awesome. Awesome. As being a filmmaker, besides trying to turn this into a TV show, do you have any other plans for LGBT movies or shows or other web series?
yeah, I feel like everything I write is LGBT related, not even as a political statement. Those are just the characters I personally connect to because I am LGBT, and I also just want to normalize that we can have gay characters in stories that aren't about them being gay. And that was,
Mhm.
I Put the Bi and Bitter wasn't really about Sam being bisexual. It was about her like dealing with like friendship and crushes and like the awkwardness of high school because high school is weird.
Mhm.
Yeah, so I'm actually working on an animated project right now that I wrote and I'm directing. And the main character is gay. She has like a crush on her friend. A lot of the stuff I write is very like kid-centric, very wholesome and cute. And again, that goes back to like wanting to like have accessible content for LGBT kids.
Awesome. I love that. It's really, really important. And like you said, I think that it's important to come from people from the LGBT community because the other content will come through with a straight filter of what
Yeah, yeah.
straight people think that LGBT kids need to hear and whatnot. So I think that's super important.
Yeah, and another thing I want to say about I Put the Bi and Bitter is that we never wanted to show homophobia on screen. We never wanted to show violence or hate crimes or like anything negative, just because constantly seeing that and constantly being reinforced these toxic ideas, it's like harmful if you are gay, and then it's also harmful for like just other people watching that this is like reality. Everyone in this series, like no one is being overtly homophobic, even if like the mom is kind of clueless or the friend is kind of oblivious. Like it's never coming from a place of hate, it's just coming from ignorance. And I guess that's what we wanted to promote, is that these things we can like talk about them and just like open the conversation, and also to make people aware that heteronormativity is not always violent. Sometimes it is just language and small comments that we have to consciously be aware of.
Yeah, and I really liked that scene. I really noticed that you did that well with the scene with Sam's mom talking to her friends when she showed the Sadie Hawkins dance dress. And the friend said, "Oh, is her boyfriend gonna like that?" And the mom said, "Oh, she's not dating anyone." And the other one said, "Well, she has in a relationship on Facebook." And her mom's like, "But she's always with Naomi. Who would she be dating?" And I thought that was so great. And then the character Becky, of course, is awesome. That love the scene where she was with the principal and Alex, and she made some comment, and both Alex and the principal are like, "Oh gosh," and they're like, "Do you want to take this one or should I?" So I love that you do have those heteronormative little ignorant comments in there that you tackle very lightheartedly, like with the other mom kind of drinking her drink and she rolled her eyes. She was like, "Oh boy, like they're so clueless." And I think it's important to show that because it's a very subtle way of showing people that our language does matter. It does make a difference just assuming like, "Oh, is her boyfriend going to like that? Well, she's always with Naomi. So I don't, she doesn't have a boyfriend, So it was very
Yeah,
interesting.
exactly. And that's another comment we've gotten, not just from like LGBT people, but from like straight people who have watched and enjoyed and connected with the series. They say that it's been like a really educational experience for them, especially in like the first season where Sam explains her definition of bisexuality and how it's not a mix of being gay and straight, but it's a completely different thing. And I just think it's so great that people are being entertained, but also being educated at the same time.
Absolutely. And the way you do it too is it's not like alienating at all. It's not like villainizing that character because Sam's mom is such a likable character. And I like you just portrayed her as being a little just clueless and a little ignorant to it, but she's still very likable, that she's not villainized like, "Oh, this ignorant homophobic person," and Sam was able to teach her mom that, and
Yeah.
her mom was accepting in the end. So I really liked the way you did that.
And the same with Rebecca's character in season 2.
Yeah, and I saw in the comments that actually a lot of people really liked Rebecca. She had a lot of positive comments, and they were like, oh, Rebecca in that last scene, but I love her, so she was
Yeah.
likable still. So you are Asian, you are female, you are gay, and you are a filmmaker in this straight male dominated space. How is that for you?
Honestly, it's weird, but I've also kind of embraced it at this point. I'm like really proud to be all of those things, and I'm really proud to make content for these marginalized groups and be a voice and be an activist. I would say the most challenging thing though is when you're a minority and when you release content that highlights a minority, it's automatically considered a political statement and people expect it to be perfect. So when we released I Put the Bi in Bitter, we had some criticism. They were like, well, Sam doesn't represent all bisexual people. Alex doesn't represent all lesbian people. And I'm like, well, they're just characters, I shouldn't have to represent the entire LGBT community in one character or one show. Like, obviously, the LGBT community, like any community, is so diverse and vast. And so the fact that marginalized creators are put on this ridiculous pedestal and they're like expected to like represent everyone and represent them perfectly, it's like a big pressure, and it's an unrealistic expectation, and it's an expectation that non-marginalized creators aren't expected to like do. Like, you don't complain to the creators of The Office and say that they don't represent every type of office worker, and it's like, so stuff like that is kind of frustrating sometimes.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
It is. And I find too that, so I'm a screenwriter, and the scripts I've written, the main character is always female. So I have gotten comments like that before. Somebody was like, oh, this character sounds male. And I'm like, well, in my head, it's female. I don't know. I've just gotten kind of comments like that. And now I feel like too, because I'm a female screenwriter, that every main character, because one of my main characters was a male, I don't know. It just is kind of a weird space. Like, am I expected to have every main character be female because I'm female? It's just strange. And I feel like males don't get those comments when they write a main character that's female.
Yeah, for sure. It's just weird because like everything I write is very women of color centric, very LGBT centric, and I don't want that necessarily to be associated with politics. Like, that's just my life, that's just my experience, and like the stories that I connect with and want to share. And I hope that in the future we have enough content that I Put the Bi in Bitter isn't considered like a gay series. It's just like a series,
Exactly. And we just do write what we know, and we write from our experiences. And just because you're Asian and you were adopted and you're part of the LGBT community, that's not a political statement. That's your life. That's your experience.
Right.
So for somebody else to tell you, oh, your content is political, that's like, well, my life isn't political. I'm just living my life. So
And especially when we are representing these marginalized groups, obviously I would never want to harm these groups in every way. So there's just like that added pressure of representing the characters in the most authentic, positive way. And it's like, it's kind of hard to do that sometimes.
Yeah. And I think it is a lot of pressure, and, all of us can just do the best that we can. And like you said, you're not the spokesperson for the LGBT community, for the whole community. You're just writing, what you know and what you want to portray. And that's important. And you are contributing. And you see that with all the comments and all of your followers. They really resonate with the series. And I think that's really, really awesome. And when did you know that you wanted to be a filmmaker?
So I didn't know what I wanted to do in high school. I was kind of all over the place. I had considered filmmaking just because I was kind of into like environmental activism, and I had watched environmental documentaries, and I was like, oh, maybe documentary making is something I could do. So I applied to a couple film schools, and then I applied to just like a couple regular colleges. But again, I like didn't know that I wanted to pursue filmmaking. But I got into one of the film schools, and I was kind of like, okay, well, this seems easier than going to real college, because I had spent all of high school doing the IB program, which is very educationally like draining. So I was kind of tired of school. So I was like, oh, I'm just going to go to this film school, try it out for a bit. So I kind of became a filmmaker by default in that way. But then once I got there, I took some writing classes, and I realized I really, really loved writing. And then I also realized it was like such a great way to be an activist, because you can create content that's representative of the stories you want to see. And so, yeah, I just fell in love with it. And I fell in love with like the power that filmmaking has to explore these issues and like explore these ideas and open conversation for other people.
films are so powerful, and not just documentaries, but like you said, like we're internalizing the messages that we see. So filmmaking is super important and really powerful. And that's so crazy to me that you kind of just like fell into filmmaking, because you are such, I'm not just saying this because I'm interviewing you, you are such a talented filmmaker. And for you to just be like, oh, I'm going to try filmmaking, and then just like have this knack for it and be, it's just crazy to me. I'm like, how is that possible? What are your favorite movies and TV shows for the LGBT community, or shows or movies that you recommend that you think get it right?
I love Booksmart, the film that came out, I think
So good.
it's directed by Olivia Wilde. She's amazing. But it's about these two teenagers in high school just living their lives. And one of the teenagers happens to be a lesbian, but that's like not her defining trait, you know, like she's still like a person and a teenager and a girl. I feel like that film is really, really good for representation because it does that. Because, you know, it normalizes sexuality where that's not, like, the film isn't about her sexuality. She just happens to be gay, you know? So I
Mm-hmm.
love how it normalized that. And it's also just a really fun and funny movie. It's so
It's
great.
so good. I loved it. It's so good. And that actress, I never remember her name, but she's really talented, and she really portrayed that character really well. And
Yeah.
it was so funny. And I liked that too. I really liked it that she was just a person in high school with her, and it was about her and her best friend, and how, you know, how her best friend was like supportive of her, like trying to get like her, I felt like her best friend was more sexual than she was, and her best friend was always like trying to get her to get with people. It was like, it was cute.
Yeah. Yeah. And then in terms of TV shows, I really love Schitt's Creek.
Oh, I haven't seen it, but I
Oh
heard
my
it's
gosh,
incredible.
it's so amazing. It's created, written by, starring Dan Levy, and he is openly gay. He's like an activist, but his character in this show is in the LGBT community, and he has a relationship with a man, and it's very desexualized, it's very wholesome, it's very cute, and it's like a sitcom, so it's about this family and it's funny. And what I love about it is that it's very positive and loving, and spoiler, they do have a happy ending. And it's like we're so used to seeing gay relationships end in tragedy or end in trauma, or one of them dies or they die, and it's like,
Oh my gosh, so true.
but it's like this one is just like that is off the table completely, and it's just like normalized, and it's very loving and good. And we just need more,
Oh,
yeah, we just need more representation like that.
I need to watch it. I always see people talking about it online. I really need to watch it because I've heard
Yeah,
it's
and it's
like,
also just really, really funny.
yeah, I heard it's hysterical.
Yeah, I love it.
Oh, awesome. Wow, really cool. So I know you have so many plans. You said that you're doing this animated thing, and then you're planning on I Put the Buy in Bitter as a TV show. What other plans do you have for your future? Where do you see yourself?
I would love to become a staff writer for TV shows. Like, that's what I want to do. I want to be a screenwriter. I want to write for kids shows, like working for Nickelodeon or Cartoon Network or something like that. I feel like with COVID happening right now, my future is I'm kind of just waiting out to see what happens, because I graduate in a year, but I'm not going to move to LA if the world is still like mid-apocalypse.
Right.
um, yeah, so we'll see how that goes, but I would love to write. I would love to just keep making my own things, like my independent works. Yeah, I'm just excited to keep making stuff.
Awesome. And what advice do you have for others that are either, and you could pick or do for all three, but either are adopted or LGBT or a minority in their field?
Yeah, I would say this applies to all of them, but just finding a community, finding a support system, whether that's your friends or your family. Even online communities are great. There are so many. I just found a bunch of Facebook groups that are like LGBT Asians, LGBT Sapphics. It's like there's so many like niche communities on the internet that you can find, and I've found some of my best friends through the internet, which is crazy. Like, we are so connected. Yeah, so finding people you can talk to and like have a safe space. Self-care is so important. I meditate daily. I have like a meditation app and just do it like 3 minutes a day, which is like really helpful for me. I'm teaching myself how to juggle. That's been
Oh,
like a big quarantine hobby for me, and I found it really helps with my like anxiety, so that's kind of fun. Doing things you love outside of your field, just like having time for like yourself and stuff like that.
Yeah, I agree. That's so important. Just doing something for fun, just for the pure joy of it,
Yeah.
can really be life changing if you do something fun for yourself every day. So, Sad Girl Productions is your brand, is your company, your filmmaking company.
Yeah, so Sad Girl Productions is a company that I co-founded with my very good friend Dana Elizabeth, who I met in film school. We both write very feminist-centric comedies, and we were like, hey, we write very similar things. We should make a joint YouTube account so we can like market to the same people. And I was like, cool. And then the YouTube account kind of turned into like this company because we like came up with a name, we got a logo, and we're like, oh, I guess this is like a thing now. But so our goal with Sad Girl Productions is just to create diverse, inclusive, female-centric films that highlight, you know, women of color, LGBT women, not only on screen, but also behind the scenes. Because, you know, even if you have like a really kick-ass female-led film, if it's filtered through the lens of entirely male writers, male directors, male crews and producers, that doesn't do anything to change the toxic culture in the film industry. We really try to diversify our crews behind the scenes as much as possible. And again, that's what I'm proud of with I Put the Buy in Bitter, is that so many of the department heads were women. You know, it was written by, directed by, produced, production design, cinematography, sound, music, all of those lead creative positions were spearheaded by women and gay women and women of color. Yeah, that's just what we're trying to do with Sad Girl, is to make change in the industry by just diversifying everything,
I
giving more
love that.
opportunities.
And how did you come up with the name Sad Girl Productions, and when did it kind of come to fruition?
Yeah, so the name is actually something Dana came up with, and it goes, well, one, it's ironic because we make feminist comedy films, so sad and comedy
Mhm.
is kind of like, and then also it goes against the stereotype we see a lot in film that women constantly have to be like happy, wholesome characters who like don't have negative emotions. Like women aren't allowed to be like angry on screen, women aren't allowed to be like sad on screen or vulnerable, and so it goes against that too.
Yeah, awesome. I love that. And when did this idea with your friend come about? And when did you make the YouTube channel?
Yeah, so this was actually the summer of 2018. Dana was in the middle of editing her web series. So she also has a web series up on our YouTube account called Filtered Water. And it's about a group of high school girls who are on a swim team and like the conversations that they have. And it's a comedy. We made the YouTube account before that came out. And then also as we were shooting Buy in Bitter.
Do you and Dana work together? Do you write together?
Yeah. Dana is also a writer and director, so we kind of just help on each other's projects how we can. So I production designed her web series, and then she did production design for all 3 seasons of I Put the Vine Bitter. And yeah, she's just so great. It's so great working through this with someone else.
It is. Yeah, it's nice to have a team or somebody you can rely on because it's such a big production, and that's nice to have a good team that you can depend on.
For sure.
So, where do you see Sad Girl Productions going? All your other films that you're planning to write, is it that all going to end up on that channel?
Yeah. We'll probably just compile everything on Sad Girl Productions, the YouTube page, try to grow that way. We're not sure what we're doing with the official company and stuff because we both don't know what our futures hold in terms of like moving and like starting to work professionally in the industry. But for now, we just love it. We have like the Instagram account. We love like the little community that we've built through the web series and stuff. So
Yeah, you have quite the following. You have quite a community. I love that.
thank you.
Well, thank you so much for talking to me today and sharing all of your stuff with me, your web series, your life, your experiences. It's been amazing.
Thank you so much for having me. This was really fun to talk about.
It was so much fun. I loved it. I really enjoyed talking with you. This was really great.
Thank you so much.
Awesome. Well, so cool. I really can't wait to see all the other stuff you come up with. I'm really excited about the animated thing you're coming out with. That should be really, really awesome. I can't wait to see that. And I think you're going to go really, really far as a filmmaker. I really do.
Oh, thank you. That
I
means
really
so
do.
much.
You're so incredibly talented. Like, really.
Oh my gosh, thank you.
I'm going to follow you. I can't wait to see when you're like famous on Nickelodeon.
That's the dream.
It'll happen. I know it.
What an incredible and inspiring interview. I loved talking to Marin so much. I could have talked to her all day. I loved hearing about her story of growing up and being born in China and coming to Colorado and then moving back to China when she was around 10 and going to school there, and then moving back to the US when she was 16 and everyone thinking she was a foreign exchange student. She's had such an incredible life, and she's such an incredible filmmaker. I totally binged the last season of I Put the Bi in Bitter. This web series is incredible. It's so lighthearted and funny and sweet. I cried, I laughed. It was so heartwarming and intimate and so genuine. The acting was great. The production quality was great. I can't get over how talented Marin is, and I cannot wait to see more projects from her. Marin, thank you so much for coming on the show and telling us all about your life. It was such an inspiration, and your filmmaking is so powerful. You have such a strong voice, and I can't wait to see what you do with it. I just loved talking to you. I would love to talk to you more. So great. Thank you. And thank you so much for recommending Schitt's Creek, because I have to say, I watched the first episode and everybody had been talking about how great it was and how funny and everything. I was just always hearing about it. There's so many memes. There's so many videos of Schitt's Creek on TikTok. After the interview, I watched the first episode and I freaking binged this show. It was 6 seasons total, and actually while I was watching it, the 6th season came out. It only had 5 seasons when I started, and I didn't realize that the 6th season was the final season, and I was heartbroken. This show is so good. It was so funny. It's definitely one of my top favorite shows, and it was such an easy watch too. I think each season was only like 10-ish episodes, and they were only like 20 minutes, so I flew through this show. I highly recommend it to everyone. I actually recommended it to one of my friends, and she binged it as well. And it was funny, I posted on Instagram one day that I was watching it, and a ton of my friends messaged me, and they're like, oh my god, I'm watching it too, it's so good. It really is such a great show. Words can't describe how much I loved it. It was amazing. So good. Definitely check it out. Definitely check out Marin. Follow her. I'm putting all of her links in the show notes. You have to go watch I Put the Bi in Bitter. Check out her Facebook, her Instagram, everything. I'm putting everything in the show notes and her recommendations. She also recommended Booksmart, which I really loved as well, directed by Olivia Wilde. That was a great movie. I loved it. And then she recommended the documentary One Child Nation, which I definitely want to watch. It's in my queue, so I will be watching that, about China's one-child policy. Again, thank you so much, Marin. This was such a great interview. I could talk to you forever. Follow me, join my Facebook group. I will put the link in the show notes because I just changed the name of the group, and I will be changing the name of this podcast to more encompass what the podcast is all about. So I will be changing the name. Check out my website. I have a lot of different travel blogs on there, mindfulness, mental health kind of stuff on there. So go to accordingtodez.com and follow me on Instagram at desiree.argentina. All the links are in the show notes. Until next time, thanks for listening. Share this episode, like it, subscribe.